Now, want to welcome back to the program Representative Ilhan Omar, Minnesota's 5th Congressional District, also the whip of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Congresswoman, welcome back. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Hi, how are you guys?
Doing well.
Doing well. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. I want to ask about a broad question about whether Joe Biden's legislative agenda is over. But before we do, Emma, why don't you just start off with more specifics about what people are talking about in the wake of the Build Back Better non-happening, I guess.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Representative Omar, and thanks for coming on. There's been an increasingly loud drumbeat, it seems to me, and including President Biden publicly saying so the other day, that Build Back Better may need to be broken up into separate pieces, and there should be an attempt to pass those pieces separately. To me, that seems like a fool's errand, because you still then have to get past the filibuster in the Senate, and no Republican is going to vote for even the smaller pieces of Build Back Better. And then there's also talks, okay, let's make Build Back Better just the climate bill and get that through reconciliation. I have my doubts about that as well, but given this developing story, I'm curious what your position is on breaking up legislation, even though there's only really one bite at the apple left through the reconciliation process.
Well, thank you all for having me. And Emma, it sounds like the fool's errand that you are referencing was also referenced by Pelosi herself, who said anybody who's talking about breaking this up and thinking it'll get through doesn't know how legislative processes work. And I think that you are right. It is going to not be possible if we are not putting a package together through reconciliation to bypass, the parliamentarian and the procedural hurdles that we've already seen take place in the Senate.
So I guess then, that opens the door to the question. Is Joe Biden's legislative agenda done? We'll find out what happens in 2022, but I think there's reason to believe that Democrats won't retain both houses at the least. But at least until 2022, is this basically the end of the legislative agenda?
I know that there are a lot of people who would like to see the agenda be over, for us to abandon the promises that we've made to the American people. But the majority of us in Congress, not just progressives, but I think majority of Democrats are interested in pursuing this agenda as aggressively as possible. There are a lot of options. As you remember, there was a framework that was initially put together that the White House said was agreed upon by Manchin and Sinema, and then Democrats in the House decided to mess with it a little bit, which I suppose upset Manchin. And there's still options, I think, for us to pursue this agenda.
What are those options? Is that framework, or is it basically just like we see what President Manchin wants to suggest, and then people follow suit?
Don't give him that credit. He's not president. He won't become president. But I do think that there is a path that's being talked about where, we put together a reconciliation piece that has climate provisions, that has childcare, some form of getting the child tax credit extended. So those conversations are still happening. I know that free college is also being talked about as being supported right now. So there's still a lot of conversations that are taking place. I don't know what the ultimate package would look like. These days, everything is sort of hodgepodge in some ways, but I'm optimistic that something will be put together in the next couple of months.
But based on the Manchin's, I guess, touchiness, right? If the House decides to mess with it a little bit, then he backs away. Is the best approach just basically saying, okay, the ball's in your court, and then bring it back to us in the House, and then we'll send it through? Because everything seems to stop with him in terms of these negotiations.
I do think giving him a crack at it, a first take, might actually be strategically possible. I think, Speaker Pelosi was alluding to this. I think the challenge of letting him draft something is that, you might not be able to get a majority of us in the House to vote for it. So there is a delicate dance that needs to take place. And we're all committed to this as legislators to continue to do that dance so that we can deliver for our constituents. But what I will say, is that the Freedom to Vote Act is actually a Manchin legislation. And so, nothing says that if we allow for him to produce legislation, that if there are no procedural hurdles, that, that it's not to pass.
I mean, we should say, though, in the event of some hodgepodge of, a Frankenstein version of Build Back Better, theoretically, the procedural hurdles are already dealt with because that would go through reconciliation. You wouldn't need to create a carve out like
and that's what I was saying. I think
right.
we cannot go down the path of saying let's have singular pieces of legislation move because we know they will run into procedural hurdles. So for me, it's easier to commit to and go along with a process where we are putting some pieces together through reconciliation, because then we know that at least they will get passed.